you need to have someone contradict you and basically shut down your bad idea or question your idea to a degree where you can actually qualify it properly rather than just running at it with the emotions you had when you first considered it.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast Evolve with me, Lewis, and Sam. And before we get
Hello.
started, guys, if you enjoyed the podcast, give us a follow on Spotify, follow the YouTube, follow us on TikTok, the podcast Evolve, follow us on Instagram, podcast Evolve, because we leave that shit to the end. And if you guys are listening this far, 20 seconds in, just do it, please. It helps us out.
You know, it must be good if Lewis is that keen. I'm good.
How are you doing, Sam?
I'm good, thank you. I'm doing well, thank you. Chilling, been traveling, been enjoying life. Not traveling as in left the country, not yet. Went to London recently. Actually, the weekend just gone. Saw our boy Shy.
Oh, nice.
Caught up with him. Yeah, he was saying you've got some boy dates planned up.
Yeah.
Some meetups.
I've booked in to see him because I know because he mentioned that date that you guys were doing stuff. I think it was like weekend just gone.
Yeah, he should have come through.
I literally couldn't. That was the day I was moving everything to here. So dude, I'm in my office. I'm in the studio. I'm gonna start calling it the studio. I prefer studio to office because it is technically the studio and the office, but I just like saying the studio. And I was just showing Sam the investments I have made into this office.
Show off though. You might as well show it off.
Well, when it's all here, I might do. That might be that might be an Instagram reel. That might be an Instagram reel. Yeah. It's like MTV offices. Yeah. It's like it's gonna be. I have a vision.
Set the scene,
and I think it's gonna be sick, and I'm looking forward to it. And it's a setup I've wanted for like.
Fair.
This is like the first time I could probably have the setup that I would want.
Okay.
Just because obviously, office was in my bedroom last time, but like now I can get, you know what? I'll say that.
Okay, Marcus Brownlee. All right, Mr. Who's the Boss? My dream office setup.
I think it's gonna be good. So yeah, I'm in a new setup, in a new house, new area, and I'm gonna be honest. Like I had this part of like first day where I'm loving it, love the space, I love that I have everything. I did have oh my fucking god, I'm here, like, and it's just a huge adjustment, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to like socialize and like meet new people because like my boys aren't here. Like I need to. Where are my boys?
You are in the middle of like, you are outskirts London to a point where like we talked about it. So I'm going to say it again. Lewis's the average age in your friendship group is going to be 30, and that's because there's going to be an equal number of 50-year-olds and equal number of 20-year-olds. Yeah, and it's just going to meet in the middle of 30 something.
But what I didn't tell you, I don't know if I told you this off camera or not, but there's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu kickboxing club, which is like a short distance from me. So I'm going to do that to kind of like get out of my comfort zone and, you know, be a bit more social. And plus it'll just get me out of the house because I'm working from home 4 days a week. And once I run out of things to like hang up and like, you know, like IKEA things to build, I might go insane. So I need to do stuff. But no, I am enjoying it though, despite the adjustment. Like I am enjoying it, and I know it's short term. But I think it's just like a grounding exercise. Like today, I had to like, you know, find where the gym was and like all that sort of stuff, and figure out my route home from the gym. So I'm looking forward to all that sort of stuff being automatic. But right now, it requires processing power. But yeah, man, it's good, and I'm glad the move is all done, and I actually can like make the space.
You're gonna buy a new camera. I feel like that should be the next thing you buy. You should buy like a proper camera. Considering you're a video editor, I'd like to think you're gonna get like a decent camera, and then we can just upgrade to 1080p for the fans, like proper HD recording.
I don't know.
This 780, this 720p nonsense is actually pissing me off. Our videos are that
not
quality.
A TV show. You know what I mean?
I want TV quality, and actually, now we're on that point. I want more animations. Now you got your fancy little new keyboard. I want more fancy transitions. Mesmerize me, like make me a cinematic star. I'm just sat here talking into this mic, and that's it.
It's an audio medium with stream if you want to.
Do better, Lewis. This is literally your CV.
Look,
do better.
If the people want it, they'll ask.
What's going to piss you off is I'm going to watch one of the movies you edit. I'm just going to be like, oh, that's sick. And I'm just going to look at you and be like, that is sick, isn't it, Lewis? It's nice how you made them look. Look at me. Look at me and look at them.
All
Do
right.
better, man.
Well, anyway, today's
Yeah.
topic. So, actually, we're what? This is our 43rd episode now.
I believe
It
so,
is,
yeah.
yeah.
This 43.
And we haven't actually covered probably the most. I would say it's probably people think it's the most important part, but it's actually not. And it's like, oh, well, I need an idea. I need an idea. This idea. And the reason why we didn't cover that first is because anyone can come up with an idea.
True.
The idea is actually the easiest part.
True.
But execution is the most important thing.
Facts.
And I wanted to preface that before we deep dive into ideas. And you need this idea. And yes, you need to qualify the idea in many ways, which we'll go over. But ideas are great, and everyone has a great business idea. You can come up with like 100 in a week if you really wanted to, but it doesn't mean anything unless you do some shit about it. So I wanted to preface this entire episode based off that alone. But yeah, we're going to go into how to come up with a business idea, where do ideas come from. So Sam, being the infinity gauntlet of degrees, I'm going to let you start
professional
first.
waffler.
Yeah.
The professional ideas man. How do just skipping straight to the saucy sauce, the juicy parts. Coming up with ideas for me is easy. And I'm not trying to boast. I'm just always in my head and I'm always processing stuff. So I'm always just living la la land with cooking new ideas to distract myself. It's executing them that sometimes I struggle with. And although we're not talking about necessarily just executing ideas, being able to execute ideas is one of the key factors that comes into play when you think of actually coming up with a good idea. So we're not talking about your doodle sketches and your crazy stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about things that you can actually turn into a business, right?
And the reason why I preface the whole podcast with that as well is because when I was Spotify, I had a conversation with the co-founder when I flew over to Sweden, and he literally said, "Execution is everything." And that was the first. That was from a billionaire, and he literally said, ideas are great, but if you can't execute, there is no point." And this was when I think I was 21. I was thinking, I need an idea. And he basically said, like, your idea is not important. You need to be able to execute. Otherwise, and that's where people get stuck into the analysis paralysis, because they have that fear of failure and not wanting to fuck up publicly. So you just keep on jotting ideas and then they feel productive, but they haven't actually done shit. Sorry, continue, Sam.
So I've tried multiple approaches when it's coming up to let me start again because my brain is flagging. I need more coffee. Anyway, I've tried multiple approaches when it comes to coming up with ideas. I've tried the research the hell out of it and then execute it. I've tried the fail fast methodology where you just got to get something out there and see if it works. I've tried the, inspiration. I've just come up with a really cool thing that I'm passionate about and I want to get out there. And I've actually tried the more collaborative one where it's a mix of research the hell out of it and then work with someone to get it out. And the last one is the only idea I would argue that has been profitable for me. It's not just research, but be collaborative. You need to have someone contradict you and basically shut down your bad idea or question your idea to a degree where you can actually qualify it properly rather than just running at it with the emotions you had when you first considered it. Everything sounds amazing in your head when you first come up with it because the problem is a lot more apparent in the first instance you think of the solution, mainly because you thought about the problem first before you come up with a solution. So when we worked on Anxious Extrovert, we agreed that it would just be like an umbrella company. We'll come up with quirky ideas underneath it because we knew that we knew the problem was mental health and how to get it out there. We weren't clear on the solution, and we just wanted to try different ways of approaching the solution. And Anxious Extrovert is arguably where we did a lot of the first three, which is, let's just research the hell out of something and get it out. And the execution was poor on that one. So we tried really hard into creating like a well-being tracking app, and we ran at it after loads of research. We're like, okay, let's get it out. And it didn't like executing it we didn't commit well enough to the first execution of it, so we ditched it. Then we tried a different approach. What was the next one after that? The next one after that was, I think, was it the content app? It was something. No, it was the first one was a diary app. The next one was just like a well-being tracker, and then the third one was the content platform. And the third one, we basically were just like, let's just fail fast. If we go, let's just go live. If it doesn't do well, we're going to switch it off. We went live. It didn't do well. We just sat on it for ages. And across the three of them, it was clear to us that it wasn't the solutions weren't really that well thought out. The execution wasn't really that well thought out. Our whole passion revolved around the idea, and we weren't checking ourselves well enough. Now I'm working on this new idea of Luke. I'm basically Luke will call out the BS. Luke has called out the BS in a lot of the ideas. And we've worked on some other stuff before where he's just gone, nah, that doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. And he'll pull a face where you just be like, what are you on about? And I'm just like, actually, yeah, that's a fair point. Maybe I should revisit it. And I'll go and change the code, or I'll go update the structure. And I'd say those have actually been profitable ideas for me. The same approach goes for like the companies I've worked with. When I've worked in uni days, when I've worked at Experian, think business zones where I work now. Ideas that work are the ones that we've allowed people to critique, allow people to completely destroy in front of us, bastardize, and come back to us. And I guess what I'm trying to say is when you come up with an idea that you want to be profitable, you have to be comfortable with someone destroying that idea in front of you.
Absolutely.
And you have
And
to be, what do you call it, logical enough to see it as constructive criticism and use it to build up and improve the idea.
yeah, you have to think about it pragmatically. And I think Stephen Bartlett was saying this. It's like when you come up with an idea, as opposed to thinking all the ways that it can go right, you need to start with how can it go wrong, because the thing that will inevitably cause the business to fail will be that obvious thing that you could have thought about at the beginning, and could have been a 20-second conversation. What I want you to go a little bit further into is the idea that you have now with Luke, and even
Oh, okay.
anxious extrovert. You may have gone into where the idea came from. I kind of want you to go into how this idea with Luke came up, because usually my understanding of where ideas come from is it usually comes into a few categories. It's usually what you've mentioned, just kind of like the research approach, and you notice a gap in the market. It can also come from a passion or something that you want to do. It could be a problem that you have noticed, or it's like a regular problem that you have seen. It's usually, or it could be a unique insight from like your work and your experience. And also it could be a fusion of multiple different things that you like and that you fuse them together. So for example, with this podcast, I was really interested in, all the reading the self-help books and the business books, and I really like having those conversations, and I also like podcasting, and I also wanted to edit my videos more and get better at that. And then this podcast is a fusion of those different elements of my day-to-day. So going into where did anxious extrovert come from in terms of those sort of like categories that I've mentioned. And the reason why I ask you this again now, 42 weeks later, is because now it's closed. You probably have a different lens on it than you did at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you'll probably go into way more detail in terms of where that idea came from and your sort of like analysis of that compared to the idea that you're now executing with Luke.
Perfect. So anxious extrovert in itself actually came up during my master's year, and it was off the back of my mental health issues I had in my final year, surviving that, going into the master's, and it was all about business, setting up it. The master's was around entrepreneurship, and I thought maybe I can turn my passion and my struggle into an idea. So throughout the whole of my master's period, all I cared about was anxious extrovert, was learning what I could to build out something with the name anxious extrovert. Even the name anxious extrovert itself, it like as soon as it hit my brain, I was just like, I need to own that. I need to own that name. I need to own that trademark somehow. It became a part of the identity, my new identity that I had formed, a part of who I'd become, which is basically someone who was mindful of the fact that they could be two people, they could mimic other characters and become very extroverted, although my social battery was actually quite weak. And that's where the anxious part comes in. I'd like switch off and go and lay in bed and maybe disappear for a few days. It was embracing the fact that I'm that kind of person where if I'm not talking to you, if I don't live within a mile of you, I could disappear off your radar for a good year. But then when I pop back up, it's like nothing ever happened, and the extrovert side comes out. Uh, as it was developing into an idea, I think was around having projects in my masters, having a theme, something I was passionate about that made me want to do 3,000 words with a 1 week turnaround day, because that's just the life of a business masters. You just get thrown loads of work. And if I didn't care about it, it was really hard to write about something. So any projects that I was struggling to care about and they were like, oh, come up with a business idea from this perspective, I'd come up with an anxious extrovert idea, but twist it from that perspective. And I have loads of coursework branded around anxious extrovert. And then when it came to leaving uni, I was just like, well, I finished an entrepreneurship degree. I have to become an entrepreneur now. That's the title of it, right? Like all the transferable skills that come with it were more arguably just waffle I used to apply to jobs with. I didn't care about actually working for these companies. I just wanted to work on extrovert. I needed a paycheck. And that's why everything was about mental well-being. And then eventually I lost the passion for it. I lost the passion for the focus on mental well-being. And I think it's more because I no longer recognized myself as someone who struggled with mental health issues.
Mm.
So it was hard to like have a have an empathy or have an alignment with that focus and that goal. I felt like I was being disingenuous to a degree when I talked about it, because every time I talked about my mental health issues, I was talking about like it felt like a past version. Because once I finished the masters, it was like I've survived it. I won. Like I
Mm.
beat all my enemies. I'm here now. Like look at me now. I've got the degree. I'm gassed. I work for a good company. All this stuff. And then when the well-being stuff came back, I mean, I had people around me who'd be like, "Oh, if you just ignore it, it'll go away." And like, you have all these like doubts that come in your head about like, "I'll just ignore the mental health," or you don't stop putting labels on yourself. And it made me feel like a fraud, because as I started to believe them, I started to not care as much about the idea or the passion I had to keep the idea going. And as you'll notice as we go along, I didn't have an idea. I had a brand in mind.
Mm.
The anxious extrovert itself is a brand. The idea, the actual functional thing that comes underneath it, I was struggling to actually conceptualize what that functional thing is. And to this day, I don't think I've fully let it go. I'm still in the back of my head every now and then thinking of like, it feels like a problem that needs to be solved, and I just can't nail it. I can't nail what that solution is of how to actually tackle what that brand does. Maybe it'll come back one day because I still own the trademark, and maybe like in 5 years' time, I'll come back and be like, I fucking found it. I've got the resources to do it in the right way. But yeah, I basically just slowly started giving up. And as I worked with people, and some people were a bit flaky in the execution, and I asked them to do something they weren't doing it became so much hard work to keep the passion alive in this idea of like a
Mm.
well-being platform or well-being innovations. We just accepted what it was, which was an opportunity for us, the people involved, to like improve their CVs and build cool tech stuff under a business name and try new ideas. And it helped us all. Like to a degree, most of us are still in tech, or we're doing something that we've learned through the process, which is good. But that day where I kind of decided that I should call it a day was not long after a call with Ollie, where he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm done with it as well." And like, we just didn't know what to do with it, because we couldn't turn it into a profitable thing. And my whole view was like, if you're passionate enough, the money will come. And we couldn't like break that barrier of like having enough consistent users or enough like consistent activity for it to be something that we can look forward to quitting our day job for. All the data, all the research we did for every idea was like the projections were huge when we compared to other businesses that had done something similar. It was huge, and it was like the opportunities were there. Um, Arguably, it could also be a case that I was talking to too many other business owners about it, and I was getting too many different ideas and approaches for how to tackle the problem. But ultimately, the reason why it was born was because I was very passionate about well-being, and I still am now, but nowhere near as much as I was previously. Nowhere near as passionate as I am enough to like take a year out of my life to become like a psychotherapist. Not that level of passion. And previously, that was a consideration for me. So as that passion died, I just felt like someone could probably do this idea better. And if I believe that someone could do it better, and I'm not the one to do it, then I'm not in it. I'm not in it anymore. So that's where the idea kind of died. It died with the passion. And unfortunately, I don't think we were able to find a really good way of executing it. Now, funnily enough, the idea that I am working on with Luke, which I know you asked me to like pivot into, it's platform's called Hire, and it's basically creating a marketplace where people can buy and rent stuff from each other. And that was an idea that was spawned from me just sat there and Luke basically called me and went, if you're going to be done with anxious extrovert, can we just think about going to business together? Because me and him, ever since we were little, always talked about being businessmen together. Like it's always been like a dream. And even when I like failed my undergrad, or when I was failing my undergrad, Luke literally knocked on my door, was just like, why don't we work together on some business ideas? Why don't we like think of ways we can become rich together? And my whole focus was go back and do the masters. So like it's almost like now the anxious extrovert blanket's taken off, which I would say is like arguably the last remnant of the healing Sam, like the Sam that was like going from final year to who I am now. Now that kind of that last layer's taken off. I feel like I've got like my the old me back, but I'm a lot wiser. I'm a lot more skilled. I've got a lot more abilities, and I'm a lot more technically adept. And this version of Sam is like, okay, let's go back to what the old dream was, which is just come up with a sick idea, make loads of money, help people make money, all this stuff, right? Um, so now I basically sat there and I was like, all right, let's just come up with an idea. And because I think the higher project is on a path towards success, because it wasn't just something that I was personally going through and it wasn't something attached to myself. So um, it was more of an idea that came out of necessity of needing an idea. So because it came out of the necessity of needing an idea, we actually looked for the proper problem that needs to be solved and a solution that matched it, rather than just having a problem and desperately trying to find a solution. Our problem was we needed to come up with an idea, and then we look for markets that look like there was growth opportunities in there. And you've got like Facebook Marketplace and everything that are like that have popped pretty much, and they're basically normalized now. If you have something you need to get rid of, put it on Facebook Marketplace. And I was looking at this TV whilst I was like processing the ideas, and I was like, I really need to get rid of this bloody TV. And I was like, Luke, why don't we just like set up? Why don't we just rent stuff out? Like, why could I could like rather than just sell it, because it's difficult to sell sometimes because no one wants to pay like £100 for an old TV, but I also don't want to give it away for £20. Why don't I just sell it for like £10 a day, and then rent it out for £10 a day, and then when they're done with it, they'll give it back, and I'll keep doing it, and then eventually I'll make the £100. But then from that person's perspective, they've only had it for like the £10 for the period they've had it for, whatever it is. And Luke was just like, "Oh, that's actually a sick idea." And then as we were processing, we were like, "This it is a market that's getting redder, but it's not so red that we can't jump in just yet. It's not the kind of red where like it's like t-shirts. Everyone wants to own a t-shirt company, but that's like the reddest ocean. That thing is basically blood, right? But everyone wants to jump in. It's gone past its prime. But there was a point where t-shirts were picking up, and it was a busy environment, but everyone could still have their piece of the pie and make money out of it. That's what this kind of market is. So I basically started Luke, and then Luke was basically like, "Yeah, let's consider it." And Luke being Luke, like if I leave him with a project, he'll just run with it. He's like me, but he's got like unlimited focus. My ADHD will kick in 10 days later. Luke will just keep going for like years and years, and he'll just keep going and going until like he's feels like he's comfortable about something. So like he came back and he was just like, "Bro, this idea is big." And I was like, "Why? Have you looked into it?" "Yeah, I've looked into it. This is a really good idea." And then yeah, we just settled on it. So he's obviously got the finances, and I've got the technical mind. So we scoped out the idea together, and I think it's actually just about to go live. Hopefully, by the time this episode's out, the website will be officially live. But the tests, we've done like soft versions of it. We've done other things where we try to sell stuff as well through a similar approach, and it's made a bit of money. So
Okay,
we're
nice.
now going to actually properly go live, and it's exciting because it could go wrong. And I guess I've not lost any money. Luke
Okay,
has, but yeah,
good. Now this actually could go quite smooth into what I was going to ask you next is
yeah.
how you qualified the idea. And
Mm.
with this site is basically an MVP, which we've
Yeah.
spoken about before, which is
Mm-hmm.
a minimal viable
Minimum
product.
valuable, minimum viable products. Yeah.
Yeah. So give that a brief description. You've given it before, but I'll let you do it
Yeah.
again with the MBA
Sure.
and stuff. So
Sure. So minimum viable products is basically the core of what your proposition is. It's basically, let's say you want to build a website like we're building. You want to build a buying and selling website. Arguably, an MVP wouldn't be a website where it handles delivery. It wouldn't be a website where it handles like all the fancy, pretty pictures, and it's got animations. A core MVP would literally be a website that lets someone upload a picture of the item, and then someone could just come and just either buy or rent it. They just click a button to buy, click a button to rent it, and it appears at their house, even to the point where they don't even pick a date. It arrives, it just appears. That's like the core. The core of the proposition is someone being able to buy and rent. And MVP tackles that core proposition. And it looks at the reason why MVPs are so important is if it's lower effort than doing your full idea. It helps you really understand what your unique selling point is when you have to focus on doing an MVP. Because if you work with a proper team like we did to come up with an MVP idea or to like develop your MVP idea, you basically sit there and they will dwindle it back really, really down to like the poorest version of your idea. And it's really upsetting when you create an MVP because you watch your baby just get turned into like just a thumb. Like it gets just it gets turned into like the most what you see as like such a dysfunctional piece of work, something that is not beautiful at all. There's no quality to it. It's like, oh my god, why would I use this website? And why it's so important is because it's cheap to do, easy to launch, and if it's profitable, everything else will only make it better.
Hmm.
If 10 people sign up to your MVP, you can bet that 100 people will sign up to the product when it's actually properly done. And the reason why is you're testing if your core proposition works. And then you iterate from there and you kind of see what else you want to add onto it. So the MVP is what's we're about to launch beyond an MVP, arguably, just because we did kind of test the proposition and the market already exists. So it's already been a validated market. So what we're going
Yeah.
live with is more of a competitive MVP. So looking at what exists as a baseline, and then we've added on a few bits that we think make it unique.
Yeah,
And
because
that's our MVP layer.
yeah, because even you for an MVP, you could have got even simpler because it could have been just like the site with a description of what the site is,
Yeah.
and then it's like here's an email if you want to keep updated,
Lewis, we
and
could
that
have made a Facebook group.
yeah, that's an
We
MVP
could
in
have made a
itself. Yeah.
Facebook group where people just like message each other and like barter with each other. That could have been, that is a pure MVP idea. People do that. And like, we just, I think, arguably Luke just, he's very like, it needs to look perfect. It needs to look amazing. So I've had to be the guy who's been like, no, it needs to work. It needs to actually work. The core proposition needs to be there. And it'll take years, arguably, for it to get to a stage where we can say, okay, let's quit our jobs because we're in for the long run of this idea. It'll take a very long time for it to get there. Well, not a very long time, but it'll take a while for it to get to a point where we kind of go, let's quit our jobs and only care about this. But it's on the right path. It's definitely on the right path. And it's helped that we've spoken to people who are experts in the field that aren't us, if that makes sense. Because if you dive into something, you do so much research that you think no one knows as much about it as you do. And because we've kind of like considered other people's point of views, we've done like a bit of beta testing, so people have actually been using the platform, the staging version. We've got people to have a look at it, and it's getting exciting, it's getting fun. People are enjoying the look and feel of it at its current stage. So yeah, going live, it seems that we're less worried about the performance of it going live, but we're also comfortable enough that if it doesn't work, we just switch it off because it was an MVP. Like, we don't lose much in the process of
Yeah, you
launching
don't
this
have
idea.
much. You won't have much of a sunk cost
Yeah,
fallacy,
and that's the
which
best part
is
about the
good.
approach. Whereas anxious extrovert, it was so tied to who I am.
Mm.
Giving up on it felt like I was giving up on myself. Whereas with this idea, giving up on it would be purely based on the logical truth that it hasn't passed the test we've set, and that's fine. So yeah, that's key thing. How about you? Because is Xander Studios the first idea you've had business wise? You've had a few before.
Yeah, it's the first. It's the first thing for. I can't even really remember any sort of other idea that I kind of wanted to do, and so I clearly wasn't that like much enthused about it. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, for me, which is different to say you or my brother, is I don't consider myself to be like have to start a business and
Mm-hmm.
do that sort of stuff. I would have been very comfortable, and I've said this before. Like if I get to a role that I love doing, I have no issue doing that. Whereas, so for me, I suppose I'll go back to where it came from. So I've always been interested in film, and I loved film trailers. Like I loved, like when a film is shit, but the trailer's really good. Like I will rewatch the
Yeah.
trailer so many times, and like I love that feeling of like getting gassed. And
Mm.
I remember watching something on YouTube, and it was like a montage. It was like a Spider-Man edit, and I was like, I'm pretty sure if I learned how to edit, I could do a better job than this video. And I had like 500k views on it,
Mm.
and that's when I just taught myself Final Cut Pro, which is like a very basic video editor,
Mm-hmm.
and I had like basic storytelling in my head anyway because I wanted to be an author when I was younger, and I just
Yeah.
think, and I've always been interested in storytelling, and so this was it was kind of like a blend of that, and it was just fun and like just cutting up things, then like these ideas of how I can put these different clips in my head, and when it got when I realized like I'm not really super passionate about advertising, and I was like, okay,
Hmm.
maybe I'm gonna start skilling up in this area, and yeah, I just kept on doing it, and I thought if I was going to do a business or something, or if I was going to work for free and money was no object, what would I do? And I was like, well, it probably would be something like this. And I researched into it a little bit more, and you have your TikToks and everything, and videos being consumed so much, and editing's a pretty difficult thing to like. It's not like a school subject. It's not like you can just go in and like there's like film schools and things like that. But in order to be a good editor, it's actually quite a low barrier to entry.
Mm.
But you have to pretty much, most editors have taught themselves, they haven't gone to film school or anything like that. And even then, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're good. So a lot of it is kind of like down to you putting in the hours. And I quite like that aspect. Another aspect which I liked as well is the lifestyle it could give me. Um, because I could work autonomously from
Mm.
wherever I want, as long as I have my laptop and internet connection. Like I pretty much could do that. And so for me, the business was formed out of I wanted it to be a business front, not just a freelancer, because I think it sounded better. And so it was a purely perception based execution. And I
Mhm.
kind of like the idea of having the business anyway for like liability reasons and all that sort of like stuff that gets really like boring. But so for me, it was out of the the passion for sure, but
Mm.
also I already have the model that it works because you see video editors getting paid ridiculous amounts from like YouTubers and things like that. And like I researched into people who had done it from scratch, and they charged their rates being like £50 an edit, and then as the business grows, or the influencer grows, or they get better, they then increase their rate. Then it's like
Mhm.
500 an edit, or eventually. So I like the idea that my input increases more output in terms of, oh no, my
Okay.
increased input increases like return on investment as well. So
Yeah.
I like the idea that me being more creative and a bit techy, as opposed to like I wouldn't want to sit here and like write a story and like in my head and then like set it, but like because I like the efficiency of how I can cut things up, which is why I was saying to you like I'm investing in
Mm.
all these things because it has to be fun for me to do it. Like if I was editing on like a Windows XP thing, like I'd fucking hate it. But for me, I need like an ergonomic way of editing in order for me to make it fun. Um, so that's kind of how it's all kind of merged together.
Mhm.
So I've never been one to be like, oh, I've noticed this gap in the market. Like if I notice a gap in the market, and like I'll be
Mm.
like, oh, okay, I've noticed it, but I wouldn't execute it because I don't give enough of a shit about it. And I've
Yeah.
always been this way. Like I've always been like, if I don't care about it, I'm not gonna act upon it. And
Yeah.
so when I say I'm in on something, like I know I 100% am, and it's not something like it's going to waver because it gets difficult or anything like that. Like if I'm fully like in on it, like I'm in on it, and the passion doesn't really seem to fade once I've set on it. So I can be quite stubborn in that sense, which is good and bad
Mm.
because particularly for something like editing, if I've edited something, like it is you, it is what you see in your head. And if I say I've put in like hours and hours into an edit and someone goes, yeah, we're completely scrapping the entire idea of it, like you are putting a bit of you into everything. And so I then have to like switch on my work mode of being like, fine. And then like I put my different hat on and then see
Mm.
how could someone think this is shit. And then if I still can't see it, then I have more learning to do, and that's fine. But that gives me the
Mm.
opportunity to learn as well. So yeah, that's a very different. origin to
Yeah.
you. But the thing is, I already had a proven model. So I feel like for
Mm,
me, the work was already done for me, which I prefer. So I was a lot leaner in that sense. I wasn't trying to reinvent editing or like
yeah.
anything like that. There are insights I do have now, be having edited a lot of videos now, like our podcast mainly,
Mhm.
but there are ways that it can be done better, and I don't know how I would go about executing them because it would require a very engineered like brain and someone who's
Yeah.
interested in editing. So I do think there are gaps for sure to make editing a lot more seamless because there still is a lot of uh, tedious tasks. I think AI and video editing is going to be very much aligned within the next 5 years, particularly in the film industry as well, because um, the film and media industry is the slowest moving industry, or one of the most slowing moving industries ever. Like,
Really? I thought
yeah,
there'd be so much
100%.
advancement there
Like,
considering the creativity.
in terms of like the creation of like assets and things like that, yes. But
Hmm.
in terms of the editing side of things, I think we should be at a point where you can upload all your raw uh, files,
Yeah.
and AI should be able to create a really cool trailer for you in minutes.
Right. You're thinking
That
that far advanced.
I'm
I mean,
thinking
not
like
many
that.
things are that far advanced, though.
Like that doesn't exist yet. But like, say for instance, though,
Yeah.
but we can upload our podcast and it gets all
Yeah.
the best bits, but you can't get that for like a film trailer yet because it's all based on text, not
Mm,
visual. So in terms of like the visual AI
yeah.
stuff, I'm looking forward to that technology developing as opposed to
Yeah.
the actual text
So
stuff. But I think there are definitely opportunities in it for sure.
you've raised a point. You've raised a really good point around perceptions of an idea, and now I'm getting all excited because I've just thought about something. Um, you mentioned around, for example, we use AI to cut out our shorts sometimes and find the best bits.
Mm,
That's a perception thing because I would argue there's definitely some like hidden gems in some of our episodes that don't get dragged out by the AI
100%.
system.
Yeah.
There's definitely some hidden gems, and we see that as like a quick win, but it doesn't have that piece of you in there. It doesn't have that like the Lewis that will be able to pull it out and be able to like add a creative caption to it, or be able to put like a funny little edit
Yeah.
on it to actually make it more substantial. Or we often have to like when we put out our shorts, we have to like fill the creative gap with a bit more music in the background or something to like fill in like the dead silence in the shorts clips or I have to like shorten or reduce. There's still tweaks that we have to do, and I don't think any industry is so advanced that all the admin is removed, all the boring stuff is removed from it. And I think that's where passion is needed in an idea. To execute it, you have to embrace the boring parts of the actual process as well. And you have to be motivated by how much passion you have for the idea and what you're trying to achieve. And maybe going back on some stuff I said earlier around the four types of ideas, and the one that's well critiqued is usually the best one. I think you need to have a happy medium of one you're passionate about, but one that's also spawned through a necessity, not just your love for the topic.
Yeah.
Like, I might like fruits, but that doesn't mean I have to go and start farming fruits now, right?
Mm,
I really like seafood. I'm not gonna buy a trawl and start fishing. That's not my new business idea.
mm,
So it's
yeah, I hear you.
creating something that is based on necessity, but also having a personal attachment to it to a degree where when it gets really bad, when it gets really boring, you can keep going. But you're also mindful enough to have your checkpoints for if it crosses these lines, it's dead and we kill it with fire and
Mm.
it's fine. I
I
think
th-
that's the key thing there.
yeah, I think just to add on to that as well, and something which I think I've gone into before,
Hmm.
is that the difference between the businesses that we have or do or
Yeah.
is that you're very much starting a business in terms of like from an innovation, from a product
Yeah.
perspective, whereas mine's a service, and a lot of people won't pursue an idea because it's already been done.
Yeah.
However, for me, that I know there are editors who are better than me, but that means that they
Hmm.
charge more. So for me, my focus is because I already naturally think this way, what's the fastest way that I can possibly do it? And
Yeah.
I can do it cheaper. So I basically want to be able to get myself to a point where I can provide the same level of value that they're already getting, but faster and I cost less than
Hmm.
their current editor or person now, because to them, if they're doing this solely, they're probably going to be like, yeah, this is like my 1K for this edit or whatever for
Yeah.
this week. Whereas I'm in a situation now where I'm like, okay, if I learn how to do this really fast, could I get 10 100 rate video edits for like 2 weeks? Because I don't need that. Do you know what I mean? So
I get that, yeah.
that's how I'm going about it to kind of break through. Because once I'm a big time editor, I can then charge those rates and then I can lax. But for now, I need to do, the jobs that I like and find. And some of them I won't like, but I'll still put in that passion towards it because I then put on that long term lens, which I spoke about a few episodes back. Is that I know it all goes towards that long term goal of retiring early and like chilling. So again, yeah, I just wanted to add it into that as well.
I completely agree. Completely agree. What was my next point? My next point was actually around qualifying. I actually wanted to ask you for examples of really bad business ideas. Or yeah, actually, let's stick within business ideas because that's what the pod's about usually anyway.
Yeah, let's
What's some
stick.
really bad ideas you've come across?
So I'm not going to come across maybe not so much an idea, but a product, and
Name and shame.
why it failed, but why it failed and succeeded.
Mhm.
And this you'll probably agree with me. So I don't know if you guys remember the Wii U.
Yeah.
The Wii U is now essentially was an MVP for the Nintendo Switch.
It actually was.
The Wii U, however, failed because it was named Wii to start off with, and it was all about the controller. People thought it was an accessory. The concept itself actually was good, but it was marketed terribly. So I see that as an MVP failure, like because people didn't really understand what the product was. The same thing happened with the Xbox One as well, because people thought that it was some sort of living room entertainment system. People actually didn't realize it was a gaming console. Whereas if you looked at PlayStation, their marketing was very consistent. And this is why marketing can completely fuck up your product no matter how good it is. Like the Wii U was actually a decent console. Like it actually was fine. It was just marketed terribly and it was the biggest flop of all time, but it helped the Switch happen. So, but I think the Switch, as a result now, having outdone, I think it outdid Xbox in the last gen. It's a good idea of how you can take feedback and turn it into a strength if you actually take on the feedback.
Yeah.
Another idea, this wasn't a business idea, but now I'm just kind of like going a bit of a tangent in terms of how you could use feedback. I don't know if you guys remember the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie trailer where they absolutely butchered it. And that trailer was basically an MVP. I, however, think it was a publicity stunt because
you think?
Yeah, because
no way could it ever be that bad.
Because no way could it ever be that bad, but also they reanimated it in 3 months. And when has that ever been?
That's true.
When has any animation been taken 3 months to fix?
Like when Deadpool got leaked, quote unquote.
Deadpool leaking, that was intentional as well. But that's essentially what film trailers are. They're like MVPs that get you gassed. Like, because the trailer, sometimes you see a film and they're completely different from the trailer. It's like, oh, I don't remember that clip. That clip from the trailer wasn't in the movie, but it's to get you gassed. So, yeah, I know I went a bit of a tangent now. But the Wii U was absolutely dreadful. And pretty much any Windows 7 was fine. Windows Vista, awful.
Windows Vista, Windows 8, die with fire.
Windows 8, yeah. I can't think of anything else in the top of my head.
I have a few.
Go on.
I have many because I'm just a hater and I really enjoy. It's a bad trait to have, but I realized in my entrepreneurship masters that what I enjoyed the most was critiquing business ideas as coursework. Like I loved those were the best hand-ins because it was just basically me just bitching about someone else's job and completely destroying it, which wasn't nice when I think about it now, but I'd like to think it's because I'm just a very analytical person. No, I'm just a dick. Straight to the point anyway. There was a platform. There's a platform. I've got a few. I'll do the three that come to mind. There was a platform called OnLive. I don't know if you ever heard of OnLive. And if you haven't, that
No.
just goes to show. So, all right, perfect. OnLive was the first online gaming streaming service available.
Okay.
So, you know, you've got Xbox Cloud Play.
Yeah.
You've probably got a similar version for PlayStation, Steam do something like that. Everyone, every console, every like big manufacturer now seems to have some kind of online service where you can play AAA games without having a really powerful system. You just need a really good internet connection. OnLive was the first platform to do that, and it was an amazing idea. I loved it, and I think the next business company to pick up was Google with their Google Play service with the games. But on live basically was you could sign up, and I remember every like when I was younger, I used to watch this TV show. I forgot what it's called. I think it was like on Living TV or something. It's a gaming series where they'll like talk about gaming. They'll do like gaming trailers, talk through, and eventually that died out. I think after like people started posting stuff on YouTube instead, that TV show died out, and they kept repeating episodes. But it was they on live came up there, and you got every game came with like a free trial, so you can like play any game. And I didn't have like an Xbox at the time. I was a bit of a brokey kid, so like I didn't have any of that stuff. But we had a good internet connection, or good enough.
Mm.
So what I'll do is I'll go on live. I'll play the new Arkham. I'll play whatever game was available. I'll play the free trial of that on live, and I could basically have like the best time of my life playing these really big budget games on my internet connection. And then it got shut down. And why it got shut down was everyone was on consoles.
Mm.
Consoles had really good stability, really good quality. It was dependent on your internet connection, but so not so badly that your whole game would like deactivate if your internet dropped down to 5 meg. It was basically a stable connection, and it didn't go well. And I would argue the other reason it failed was it wasn't. It was a great idea at the wrong time. It came out in a time where like the average internet speed was like 5 megabytes, and the whole project is dependent on how good your internet speed is, the quality of the games, the HD, everything's based on the internet speed, and it had massive lag. So because of that, it just failed, and I think it was too expensive for them to run. But it's proven to work because Google's done it, Xbox has done it, and although it's still crap when they do it.
Yeah. Speaking of Google, sorry, we need to talk about something because you just reminded me. Google
Which one?
Glass.
That's my second one.
Yeah, we need to talk about this.
So Google Glass, and I met one of the co-founders of the idea. I've met him at the EIA, European Innovation Academy, and he explained what went wrong with it.
Oh,
And it's something
okay.
that I actually fundamentally believe in as well. Google Glass had an amazing campaign. They had celebs wearing it. They had celebs wearing it. And they had more celebs wearing it. It was publicized in the news, in the media outlets. It wasn't a product that was relatable. And it wasn't relatable just because it was just celebs wearing it, but it wasn't relatable also because it wasn't embedded into the ecosystem, into like the mainstream earlier on. A lot of the tech we have now, iPads, phones, a lot of things we have now at some point in some kind of sci-fi TV show, you've seen it before or something similar to it before.
Yeah, I remember
It's
we
been
spoke about
embedded
this
in the back.
before. Yeah,
Exactly. It's been
yeah,
embedded in the back of our minds.
yeah. Mm.
And as things come into reality, it's almost like we've been dreaming of this our whole lives. So when it becomes achievable, it's like when you see a toy on TV and you need to have that toy. As a child, you fill in the gap of what that toy can do between what the toy is and what the TV show you watched. So if I buy a Power Ranger toy and I watch Power Rangers, I'm pretending I'm fighting demons on my carpet, right? But as you grow into an adult, that ability to fill in the gap disappears. So all of a sudden, X-ray glasses are just cheap plastic things with holes in it. It's not the same. Whereas now the tech is the same. An iPad is just like the Star Trek thing. In fact, even better. It's got a camera. You can do all these quirky things so you can draw on it. Bloody Scotty wasn't doing none of this back then. He was struggling. So like we're at a point where like we can actually live what we imagined the experience was like.
Mm.
Google Glass, there was nothing that looked like that. There was glasses that looked like this, and they had holographic projections. There was contact lenses that you can do all these quirky things with. But Google Glass, in the way it's designed, was not anything else embedded into the ecosystem. And some people might say, oh, well, technically there wasn't any massive movies where the bloody, I don't know, MetaQuest goggle things were embedded into it. But there are. There were like games characters that had their big fucking bulgy things on their face. There's Ready Player One, which became a massive game about the VR system, and that blew up. and all these now bulky headwear like Apple, whatever it's called. What's the Apple Glass thing called?
Vision Pro, I
Vision
think it's
Pro,
called.
yeah, stuff like
Yeah.
that is now like it's now acceptable. It's now acceptable to wear stuff like that because we've seen it somewhere. We've got some kind of placement for its value in the ecosystem, and the underlying truth under all of this is a good idea. That idea would have been executed better if they had implanted it into media beforehand, slowly, like a lot of tech gets done now. A lot of tech, the idea already exists, the idea's already been patented, and then gets implanted into shows and movies. A lot of the creativity does help to inspire stuff. I mean, the day and the age we are in now, tech grows so quickly that you see patents and ideas being implanted. So the Cybertruck being in video games before it became a reality. Cyberpunk 2077's got so much random tech stuff that has actually already
Mm.
been patented, built into it. And just wrap off my point, sorry. Wrap my point. The other aspect is for an idea to sell well, if it's a crazy idea, is sell it with a peer in place. Sell it with a lifestyle image of someone who's a peer in place. So
Mm.
you've put in Kevin Hart on TV wearing like these crazy looking glasses. I'm just thinking these are just rich people toys. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not like you. I'm not weird. I'm not going to the
Yeah,
Oscars.
because
But then if you
yeah.
put Lewis wearing that, and you put loads of my friends wearing all this stuff, and people that are around my age group wearing it and looking like normal people, and they've got like a girl looking at them like, he looks good. Maybe I feel like wearing it so I can inspire my person to think I look cute too. It becomes more relatable.
But also, did a little research as well.
Mm.
It cost $1,500 in 2014.
It did. It did, but that was
No one
excusable.
had
And you
that
can
kind of money
people
then.
were paying dumb stuff. People were paying silly money for fashion back then. People were paying worse money for worse things back then. So that might cost 1,500 in 2000 whatever, and it was being sold as a luxury item. But there were people buying dumber stuff back then for more money. So its price
Yeah,
was not
true.
really a factor. I'd say if they sold it well and positioned it well, people would have sold their kidney for it,
Do
like
you
they used
do
to do
you,
for
do you
iPhones.
think if it came out, like say 5 years later, it would have flopped the same, or you reckon it would have been fine?
I think if it came out now, it would flop the same because there are competitive alternatives that do a better job and are better form fitting. Like Huawei and a few other brands have done some. I think Ray-Ban and a few others have also attempted some really good approaches where it just looks like normal glasses with a lens built into it, and you
Yeah,
can
it
like
did
see
look
so.
shit. That
Yeah, it
also was a
looked like
major.
it made you look stupid, and there was not
Yeah,
enough. Like I read somewhere the guy who came up with the trolley, what he did because it came out in a time where like people didn't want to look disabled. Simple as that. They thought if you needed an aid to do something as simple as shopping, there must be something wrong with you. So what he basically did was pay people to use the trolleys in stores, pay actors to go into big supermarkets and use it. And why that sold well was you then started to see normal people doing it, so it didn't feel stupid. Like wearing a COVID mask. There was a brief period where I was just like, you just look like a fool. What's going on here? But then when you get on the tube and you're the only one that's not wearing it, you're kind of like, oh,
yeah,
like when it first came out, I was just like, my mindset around the mask when people start wearing it before like they started saying in the news that you should wear it. When people started wearing it, I was like, you'd only wear it if you were ill, and I didn't want to look like I was carrying the plague. So I was like, I'm not gonna wear it because I haven't got it. Like I'm fine. And then when I got on the train or like a bus one day, I went to like the gym, and I'm just like, oh, I'm the only one that's not got one. And that it wasn't in the news then, but like I was like, now I look like just like I'm carrying the germ like everyone else, but I'm just being reckless.
yeah.
So then
You
I
look
started wearing
ignorant.
it. Yeah, I look ignorant.
Yeah,
So like it's almost like there's a need to conform, and we can all act like we're individuals and we're powerful, but to a degree we're all conforming to something. Like remember I talked about the hipster thing
mm.
before, like all hipsters think they're unique, but they all wear like pretty much their hair up in a bun and they wear like the tightened shirts and all this. There's a theme that they all fit into, regardless of how special and unique. Even by being unique and special and dressing like a weirdo, you fit in the theme of weirdos. Like
Yeah,
everyone fits within a tribe and a theme, and you kind of have to have your idea fit within something that makes it tangible and it's easy to embrace. My last one was Fisker, the car brand, the
don't
one
even
that
remember
got
that.
destroyed. So Fisker Ocean in particular was the last car that destroyed the company. So it was an EV car company on paper, amazing, best 0 to 60, best range for its type, like over 400 miles range. There was a version of it where it had a solar panel built on the roof. The car looked nice. It looked good. It looked good until people started reviewing it and people actually drove it. And they realized this MVP was peak. It was just crap. And like the car itself, the functionality worked. The software was where it failed. And then there was this bit where like they had a special like button in the screen where you pressed it and it was a video of the CEO talking about Fisk's goal and vision, which was just like, why would you dedicate like a whole button just to that? Like on the screen, there's a whole like in menu functionality where you click it and that's all it does. It just plays that guy's video. That should be like a hidden item somewhere in like the media storage. And it was aspects around that where it got basically publicized that this was a failed idea. And why that failed, I think if that was the first EV that came out, like a Tesla, people would have accepted it for the crap heap it was because it was the first of many. But it came out after the minimum viable product was it has to have good tech. If it's a car that is based on running on electricity, you should be good with tech because we connect tech and electricity. If it was a petrol engine car, we're happy when it doesn't. We don't care if it doesn't have a bloody LCD screen. We're happy to pay for a car that literally just has a good working wiper and a radio when it's petrol. But if you're an EV car that I have to plug in like my mobile phone, I'm making the same level of assumptions that it's just as technically able. And if it doesn't meet those requirements like the Teslas do, like the BMWs do, like all these fancy cars do, then you failed. So then it ended up shutting down. And then what happened was when it shut down, it turned out that the company run their service. It didn't have any like outsourced support for their systems. So when it went into administration, no one was getting any over-the-air updates. Stuff just got worse. And now a £40,000 car, you'd be lucky if you can sell it for 10K. You'd be lucky. Like people are buying it for a lot less. Brand new, that would be. If you just sat in your garage and did nothing with it, you'd be lucky if you sold it for 10K. It's gone down massively. So that's the last of it. I did have one question before we sign off.
Go on.
If there was anything you could ask the next generation of inventors to consider when they're coming up with their ideas, what would it be? Like a desperate plea for people to do better when they're coming up with an idea. What would it be?
Take on feedback early as possible and don't take it personally.
Agreed. 100%. I was going to say, for the love of God, just think about the consumer. Just think about people that are using it. One thing I'm sick of is a terrible outcome focus for a digital idea. There's so much tech that's coming out, and I'm a very tech person, and maybe it's because I'm like more technically adept. I like to tinker with things, but there's so much tech that comes out where the devs assume they know what people want. They assume that it needs to work in a certain way, that the functionality is just ridiculously stupid. Like it's so long-winded or it doesn't do what I want and there's no alternative way. There's no workarounds available. There's no ways to like tinker with the granular aspects of the components. Like if I bought a phone that's got a good camera on it and I can't tweak whether I'm taking my picture in 4K, 1080p or anything like that, it's just a picture. And you just assume that the AI will tell me or the AI will pick the perfect picture for me. That pisses me off. Because maybe I am a professional photographer and all I have is my phone and I have an opportunity to take a picture. Or maybe I've got to upload that picture somewhere and I need to reduce the file size. I'm not just complaining because I realized that my phone has that issue. I'm just fed up. Okay. I'm just fed up. But sometimes you just put in a position where it's like, take a picture. And I'm just like, I want to maybe compress the picture because I need to upload it onto a website that's got 10 megabits max. And the picture I'm taking is 100 for some bloody reason. So it's those kind of like focuses where sometimes you could do too much into thinking about the user experience and you basically pigeonhole your users into a terrible experience. And they might not pick it up, but we've said it in many other episodes. It's all about the tiny cuts. Your brand,
Facts,
your idea
actually.
might sell well, but the little fuck ups you keep doing, it's only going to mess up your brand in the long run. And it's slowly going to reduce your points, your kudos points you need to be the best brand. It's slowly going to work against that. So yeah, that's more or less it for me.
Absolutely, man.
Final update.
Oh,
People might have noticed the ring I'm wearing. It's not my wedding ring. It's
I was
not.
going to ask, yeah.
Okay, the wedding hasn't happened yet at this time of recording. It is my practice ring. Basically, I get really anxious when stuff's stuck on me, whether it's my boxing gloves, whether it's my wraps. Just stuff being on me makes me really uncomfortable to a point where the first time I wore a sauna suit for training, I basically had a panic attack and nearly fell apart in the ring. Like, I really freak out when stuff's stuck on me. So I've been wearing this practice ring to get used to wearing a ring. Lewis, it was to a point where I offered to get a ring tattooed on my finger as an alternative.
Oh wow. Okay.
That was a genuine offer that was rejected very savagely. Guys, thank you very much for listening to the world's best podcast with a Lewis Facey and a Samuel Grantson. We will see you again next Monday, or you will see us again next Monday. We see you guys all the time in our comments section. We see you guys all the time in our likes and socials. And you can join that crowd. You can join the crew of people that give a damn about us on TikTok, the podcast Evolve, Spotify. Look up Evolve. Look up Samuel Grantson. Look up Lewis Facey. We will pop up. Lewis did say we've got the most episode of any of the random other Evolve copycats out there. So you probably find us easy on Spotify. YouTube, you're probably already watching us, but look us up, Podcast Evolve on YouTube. Have I mentioned Instagram, the podcast of? I have. Have I mentioned Facebook? No, we're not. We don't use Facebook. It's there. It's there so we can keep the Instagram business alive, if anything. Do not bother with the Facebook page. I've mentioned Instagram, TikTok, Podcast Evolve. Go there. We post pretty much the same content everywhere. We're going to get more active on Instagram. Lewis is going to post reels about his new office and setup, and he's going to message me afterwards to say, "Hey Sam, I've been doing this, and now you have to post more content on Instagram." I probably won't. That's it. Have a good day, everyone. I love you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Like this.